Welcome to the experience that is known as the Ball Hog Sports Talk, where we take sports business entertainment and do something amazing with it on a week by week basis. As plainly described, it is where the managerial decisions of big finance meet the weekly storylines of sports and entertainment. If you had to put it in pop culture terms, it is where show me the money meets just give me the damn ball. As you can see, I am on the screen dolo solo today. The Big Flow Show is out making all types of money from my mouth to God's ears, handling some business. But the show must go on because there are managerial decisions of big finance. There are weekly storylines of sports and entertainment. So there will be a Ball Hog Sports Talk show this week. In advance, like we ask you every week, humbly, please like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a foe, tag anyone that you know, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the podcast on Spotify. Because I don't have the man, the myth, the legend, thou shall be intergalactically known and respected as the Big Flow Show from the Middle Coast, because I don't have my co-host today, I am going to be leaning largely on a live audience. We have some topics planned. We're going to get into this particular episode, and it's going to be just as riveting, minus the amazing contributor and co-host, the Big Flow Show. Today's episode is going by the title. You know how we do with our titles. We put a lot into it. It's going by the title, Be Legendary. Simple and plain, yet not simple whatsoever. Be Legendary. Be Legendary is the title of the show. And in this show, we'll deal with the saying itself. Who coined it? Who said it? The meaning behind the title. Who lived it? And in sports and entertainment this week, there are some storylines that let us know that there are still people, when it comes to that statement, be legendary, who are still to be determined. The jury is still out. And we're going to talk about that today. Again, just as a reminder for those who might be new to this experience, or an introduction for those who might be new to the experience, and a reminder for those who are back, it's the Ball Hog Sports Talk, where the managerial decisions of big finance meet the weekly storylines of sports and entertainment. So let's get started. Today, we're going to start with just the saying itself. Be legendary. I like to always look up some of these things and make sure that I understand, whether it be Google or our AI assistant, what is the broad understanding when you hear be legendary? And as described, be legendary is an inspirational phrase, encouraging individuals to achieve remarkable, extraordinary, or unforgettable success in their field. It implies going above and beyond to create a lasting, positive, and widely admired reputation that, similar to a fable or a hero, is passed down or remembered for generations. I start with that broad explanation of what be legendary is, and I will then explain why I sit here in my monogram jacket. There it is, Notre Dame monogram jacket. Still fits, a little bit broader in the shoulders. Atrophy is kicked in. I am no longer a Division I football athlete. I am now I won't say my age, but an older sports dad. My position now when I go to competitions is neatly tucked away in the safe space. So I don't have the muscles anymore, but I still have the monogram jacket. When you get this jacket on Notre Dame's campus, you know that you have arrived. You are really a Division I student athlete at that point. Back then, it was still student athletes before they became millionaires. And I sit here in this monogram jacket today, as proud as a peacock, to say I am a Notre Dame man, a Notre Dame graduate, but inspired to wear the monogram jacket today because, unfortunately, the Notre Dame community got news last night that the legendary Coach Lou Holtz has been moved to hospice care because of his health issues. And so I wear this shirt, this jacket, a monogram jacket, in addition to a shirt and tie, because Coach Holtz would call this dressé, to ask humbly, before we get started with this weekly storyline, to ask humbly, everyone, please say a prayer for Coach Holtz, pray for his healthcare provider, pray for his ability to heal in any way and every way possible, and most of all, pray for the care that he's being provided. I assume down in Florida, but let's hop in, man. I wanted to get to some other storylines in terms of Be Legendary. Today's episode is going by the title of Be Legendary, and how dare we not start with where the phrase came from? Who said it? Who said Be Legendary? I am a Cleveland Browns fan, so I'm well aware of Shedeur. What I did not know, and in this week, it's worth mentioning, Be Legendary was one of the phrases that Kobe Bean Bryant is also known for having said. He wrote it on a pair of shoes that he gave to Devin Booker. Those shoes and that message have lasted beyond Kobe's life. This is the week that I don't say celebrate, that we recognize. It's the 6-year anniversary of Kobe Bean Bryant's untimely death in that helicopter crash. It was January 26, 2020. And so every year, I want to at least take at least a moment of silence, recognize not only Kobe Bryant, but his daughter Gigi, the 7 other individuals that were lost in that helicopter crash. Be Legendary, a phrase that was written on those shoes that he gave to Devin Booker, a phrase that he embodied and lived oh so well, a phrase that I think has even survived his lifetime because of what he did here on earth. So let's just a brief moment of silence for Kobe Bryant, Gigi, the 7 other individuals that died on January 26, 2020, 6 years ago this week. Devin Booker took the phrase Be Legendary written on those shoes and has applied his own spin to it. But if you think of Kobe Bean Bryant's life, the tributes that we heard this week, we get to, that is the only good thing when they remind us that it was 6 years ago. We get to see some of those memories. We get to see some of those moments on the court. We get to see some of the pictures of him and Gigi and the family when things were normal, per se. And you have to respect just how legendary he was. Now, I got to admit, I've admitted on this same platform several times, and I'll admit it again. I was not a Kobe Bryant fan. I was a part of the discipleship that was Michael Jordan, and that kept me at odds with Kobe Bryant because Kobe Bryant did and everything just like Mike. And so as a Mike disciple, I found myself not liking Kobe when he was alive. I respected the hell out of him, though. Every time you saw him play, you couldn't do anything but respect his competitiveness. You could not do anything but respect his discipline in terms of how he carried himself, how he managed his body. You could not do anything but respect his confidence. While I hated that interview and said, I trust myself more than I trust my teammates, there is a confidence in there, this sense of invincibility that was indeed the reason behind when it came to Kobe Bean Bryant. He absolutely was legendary. That same invincible nature, unfortunately, if you think about some of the things, you had the president of Poland, in this case with Kobe Bean Bryant and the helicopter crash, and maybe the pilot not necessarily heeding to the weather advice because Kobe was so committed to being legendary, so committed to his craft. How dare he miss a game? And while we mourn his loss and miss his presence, just wanted to make sure that we gave Kobe Bean Bryant his flowers today on this episode, because the title Be Legendary wouldn't exist without Kobe Bean Bryant. Fast forward, and there's another confident, disciplined young man that has embraced the phrase "be legendary." And that phrase was one that in the last draft, 2025 NFL draft, Shedeur Sanders, perfect timing, Shedeur Sanders embraced this phrase. He used it sort of as a moniker, as a theme, as he went through the draft process, as he did all the workouts, went to the combine, as he invited the cameras in addition to having some of his own, with his brother controlling a lot of the content. And Be Legendary was this calling card for Shedeur Sanders to navigate the draft process, to ignore the haters and the noise that was from the outside, to compete vigorously, which was well captured between him and Cam Ward, to be the number one quarterback drafted in last year's NFL draft. And while the detractors enjoyed seeing that phrase for that quarterback in that draft, in that moment, when he's got the entire room draped in his trademark, the Be Legendary with the 2, and he's got the dollar sign, and he's got the chains, and he's got all of the bravado that makes Shedeur. So many detractors took real pleasure in seeing not only did he not get drafted as the number 1 pick, not only did he not get drafted as the first quarterback, not only did he not get drafted in the first round, but round after round, inexplicable decisions, teams that needed quarterbacks with no rational reason whatsoever. The furthest drop that we have ever seen in modern day NFL draft history. We saw someone that was ranked on all of these boards, all the experts, Mel Kiper being the one that we go to most, or have gone to for the longest, have him graded out as a potential first round draft pick. We've never seen anything like that. The fall from first round to fifth round had not only implications of humbling a young man that coined or used, he didn't coin it, but he used it without pause whatsoever, ad nauseum, over and over again, be legendary. All right, so we got to see him being humbled in real time. You add to that he happens to be the son of Coach Prime, who also is known for his bravado. And so between when we thought maybe he would get drafted, early in the draft process, throughout the draft process, it was a real conversation about who's going to be the number 1 pick. Shedeur Sanders was mentioned in that conversation. There's a real conversation of who's going to be the first quarterback taken. Is it Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders? He was mentioned in that conversation. And so because we saw this drop, because the networks know that it has become a 3 days plus the months leading up to it, this extravaganza, there were several discussions. There were several analysts having their say. There were several fans of different franchises having their say. Several executives making proclamations as to why their decision was the right decision for who they chose. So round after round after round, there was a young man, the young early 28-year-old quarterback who had to endure all of it. And so today, on this week, when Shedeur Sanders, you see it as a Browns fan, dog pound, woo, 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 woo. When Shedeur Sanders is announced as a replacement for the Pro Bowl, whether you like the decision or not, whether you like Shedeur or not, whether you think it is warranted or not, how can we not celebrate the irony of a young man that had to literally get humbled in front of the world, who had everybody saying something, somehow, some way about Shedeur, who had to take that same draft room that was wrapped in all kind of trademark merchandise and verbiage with Be Legendary. I had to name this particular episode Be Legendary because Shedeur Sanders is going to be in this year's NFL Pro Bowl. Shedeur, hats off to you. Now, how we got there is a whole different question, right? How do you get to the point where Shedeur Sanders is in the Pro Bowl? Now, as a Browns fan, yeah, I'll defend it. And so many greats have come out and said this is indefensible. How do you put a guy who only started 7 games in the Pro Bowl? And in those 7 games, he had one that stood out, but pretty pedestrian for most of those 7 games. He is the Be Legendary replacement. We should actually name the replacement spot that Shedeur has officially garnered. He was 3-4 as a starter in his 7 starts. Now, I have a whole viewpoint on the fact that our sample size was too small. It was only 7 games. It led to Kevin Stefanski and their interesting relationship. I think it sort of led to Kevin Stefanski's hitting the exit door. He only started 7 games. All right. In those 7 games, he was 3-4. And you think, wow, he was below 500 as a starter. Cool. But he was 3-4 for a team that as a whole was only 5-12. All right. I don't say it very proudly as a Browns fan, but it just is what it is. So 3 out of those 5 wins, 3 out of the 5 wins were complimentary of our starting quarterback by the name of Shedeur Sanders. Be legendary. 60% of our wins came by way of Shedeur. We didn't have a ton of wins. I got to admit that. We didn't have a ton of wins, but the ones we did have were largely orchestrated by Shedeur. Shedeur Sanders also, I said he had one game that stood out. All right. He had a game that was 23 completions for 42 attempts for 364 yards. He had 3 TDs through the air. He had 1 rushing TD. The 364 yards were the most passing yards by a rookie quarterback in 2025. Now, that's about as bright of a spot as I can make for what he did last year. He was 49th in completion percentage. He was 49th in quarterback rating. And he had 7 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. So how do we get here? When you hear those stats, the Pro Bowl is not what you're thinking. So how did we get here? And the process that got us here can be under scrutiny. But you got to celebrate Shedeur. Be legendary, Shedeur. Now, the Pro Bowl now has been watered down to literally a flag football game. We've been saying that if the rules keep changing, if the refs keep, trying to protect the players to the point where you can barely tackle someone, it's going to become a flag football game. Well, that has been figurative speech, but we are literally going to have a flag football game. It's going to be for the first time, same week as the Super Bowl, same location. And Shedeur is going to represent the AFC as the replacement since Drake May's team made it to the Super Bowl, which we'll get to. Other people that could have been one of those replacements. Of course, you had Joe Burrow, you got Aaron Rodgers, you got Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud, Cam Ward, Tua Tagovailoa. I always mess up his name, so that's why I just shortened it to Tua, but I got it today. All right. Of the other 3 quarterbacks, I think probably earned their way to be a replacement. I would say it would be Bo Nix, Daniel Jones, and Patrick Mahomes. All are dealing with injuries. And so what we don't know of the non-injured quarterbacks, so that's Bo Nix, Daniel Jones, and Patrick Mahomes. Let's take them off because they're hurt. They've got to address injuries. So, of course, they can't accept a Pro Bowl invitation. Of the other quarterbacks, the way the process works, we don't know who else was asked. Any of the people that I mentioned, whether it be Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Trevor Lawrence, C.J. Stroud, Cam Ward, or Tua, any of them could have been asked and declined the invitation. Shedeur accepted the invitation. Shedeur has acknowledged in plain words, he wanted to thank the fans, the players, and the coaches because the Pro Bowl was decided in equal parts from those three votes. The fans, the players, and the coaches. So he thanked all three. You don't know how he got there. And then he said something that I think brings this full circle. While you might not like the fact that Shedeur has had a platform since he was in high school, while you might not like the fact that Shedeur was raised with, let's call it a silver spoon in his mouth, while you might not like the fact that Coach Prime was able to create not one, but two very favorable situations for Shedeur, both at Jackson State and at Colorado, while you might not like the fact that Coach Prime, in his experience as a media figure, figured out this content thing and hired his own son to make sure that Shedeur at all times had at least one media outlet, one content provider on his side. While you might not like the fact that Shedeur got his jersey retired after a short stint at Colorado, you might not like all those things. What you have to do is respect a young man in his early 20s that had that whole sports world laughing at him. They had all the experts saying that he got exactly what he deserved, that tried to make us rationalize something that we knew as sports fans. If you have been in this sport long enough and followed it, you know you ain't seen nobody drop that far. A potential first pick dropped to the 5th round. Even Larry Tunsil, who right before the draft was caught with a gas mask. Somebody put out a video of him in a gas mask, hotboxing, which means he's smoking straight weed, cannabis, before it was legalized. Even he didn't drop from the 1st round to the 5th round. You drop a few slots. Randy Moss, Warren Sapp. You go down the list of people that drop slots. But to drop an entire 2 days to the 5th round, unprecedented. And those who had platforms laughed, mocked. They finally got their moment to say, I told you so to Shedeur. And let's be honest, it was probably by way of Shedeur to get a message to Coach Prime. You got to respect the fact that the young man said, I'm going to keep working. I'm going to do everything I need to do. When he got his opportunity, he kept working. And now he's got another opportunity. And these words, and I'll end here. I hate the Big Flow show isn't here on this one because the dog pound looks good. We got a Pro Bowler, baby. We got a Pro Bowler. The first one we've had since I think 2007. All right, he was the first rookie to win a game for his opening game for the Browns. He's the first one since 1997. That's the old Browns. That's not even the new Browns. And Shedeur won his debut as a starter. He won it. He did. But these words are why I wanted to make sure I started here and why it inspired us today to create this particular title. Be legendary. Shedeur said this, still plenty of work to do. We don't know what's going to come of Shedeur. We don't know what's going to become of his career. He's got a new coach, new opportunity. We'll see what he does with it. An offensive-minded coach at that. But those words, still plenty of work to do, remind me of what he said on the heels of being snubbed I gotta say, there was no reason for him to drop 4 rounds. That was a message that people sent loudly to both that young man and his father and the rest of his family, and to all of the fans that have followed Shedeur, who bought his jersey, who went to Colorado, who have built this platform, amazing following Shedeur. We all watched him just take pride in humbling Shedeur and those who supported him. Shedeur got the last laugh, at least for now. And we'll see if he lives by those words. Still plenty of work to do. The words he said on the heels of the draft, the words he is saying now, hearing everybody talk about why Shedeur should be in the Pro Bowl. But he's there. Handle your business, young man. It's a very interesting process to create the Pro Bowl situation. It is not perfect, as we know. But truth be told, I think they got it right because we don't know who turned it down. We don't know who said no. And so there might have been people that said no, that simple and plain, it opened up a space for Shedeur, and he's in it. Please weigh in, man. I see there are a lot of people in the live audience. I'm going to try to keep up with the comments today. It's going to be a little harder because I'm rolling solo. Please weigh in. Let me know what you think. Is it legendary that Shedeur in his rookie year gets the Pro Bowl nod, or is this a travesty when it comes to the Pro Bowl? I don't know how it could be more of a travesty than. And 2022, you had Huntley made it in, who played less games than Shedeur, and I think had worse stat line than Shedeur. So it's not unprecedented to have in the quarterback position. Only so many quarterbacks in the NFL. And truth be told, a lot of the guys who are dealing with things after season just don't want to take the invitation if they've already enjoyed the experience. But tell me what you think. Is Shedeur laughing all the way to the Pro Bowl in his legendary status, or is this a mistake and the NFL is opening itself up in terms of people questioning whether or not the Pro Bowl is even a thing anymore? Another very interesting outcome when it came to votes this week. Another sports figure in professional football that has absolutely earned the title of legendary. Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is, to me, the greatest coach of all times. And I say to me because we can make it opinionated. There we got some comments. Sorry about that. What up, D Collins in the building, man? I appreciate your comment. D Collins, a live audience, says sorry to hear that, bro. Yeah, just keep Coach Holtz in your prayers, man. Just keep him in your prayers. What's up, my man Crompton in the building? Appreciate you guys, man. I'm gonna be leaning on you guys for some content, those who are watching. My girl Lisa Kelly's in the building. Yeah, Lisa, let's keep our prayers lifted for Coach Holtz. And I actually got a special message for Coach Holtz. That's the other reason I wore this jacket today. We're gonna pray for our guy, man. So keep the comments coming in, if you will, and I will try my best to keep my eye on it. The Bill Belichick saga, shall I call it, this week. Bill Belichick did not make the list of finalists for this upcoming Hall of Fame, NFL Hall of Fame enshrinement, which means Bill Belichick will not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And so when we started the show, be legendary as the title, I first asked, well, who said it? And we got Kobe Bryant, we got Shedeur. But the next category for me, when I think of the title, be legendary, on this episode of Ball Hog Sports Talk, I think, well, beyond who said it, who lived it? Who has lived a legendary lifestyle when it comes to this thing called sport? And when it comes to the NFL, You would be hard pressed when it comes to coaches to find anyone that is more legendary than Bill Belichick. Yet, Bill Belichick will not, as of this week, we know for sure, Bill Belichick will not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So let's go to the numbers. We know the same. Men lie, women lie, numbers normally don't. In this case, I would argue that it normally is not even enough to describe the fact that numbers don't lie. I would say numbers absolutely don't lie. But I had to look and see sort of, okay, where does Bill Belichick stand? First of all, he coached for 24 years in New England. After seeing Mike Tomlin step down recently and knowing that he spent 19 years there, which felt like 3 or 4 lifetimes, I can't even imagine like 24 years in one place. In those 24 years, he did phenomenal things. He won Super Bowls, but cumulatively, his entire NFL record, Bill Belichick, 29 years of coaching in the National Football League, representing that shield, putting together different rosters, coaching in a matter-of-fact way. His famous saying is just do your job. A type of guy that you probably don't want to hang out with, but based on generations of rosters, players that have played for him, that you would absolutely run through a wall for. In this episode of Be Legendary, on the same day that I wanted to make sure that I'll get to it, give Coach Holtz his flowers, ask for prayers. We hate the news in terms of him going into hospice, right? Bill Belichick is in that category and then some when it comes to being legendary. The numbers just don't lie. Bill Belichick, while he didn't give you a bunch of personality to love. I went from talking about Shedeur Sanders, perfect timing, whose dad is Coach Prime. So much personality, man, it is his own reality TV show. Actually had a reality TV show. At times, it still feels like a reality TV show, just as entertaining as could be. That's on that end of the spectrum, at that extreme. On the other extreme, as boring as they come. I'm talking about watching paint dry. As boring as they come. Bill Belichick. But on paper, on the numbers, how can you not say the man is legendary? In his 29 years of coaching in the National Football League and representing that shield, he has 333 wins to his credit versus 178 losses. He's the second most winningest coach in terms of numbers of wins in the history of the National Football League. The only person that had more wins was Don Shula with 347. And if we're being honest, he could have coached just about any other franchise and eclipsed that number. But he decided to go and coach the collegiate level and probably set up an opportunity for his son, to be fair. He has a record number, 6 Super Bowl championships as a head coach. Second most wins of all time, most Super Bowl wins of all time. Those are two very, very, very impressive categories and important categories when we're talking about legendary as it pertains to a coach. He went to 9 Super Bowls. He won 17 division titles as a coach. And what I think is adding a whole bunch of rubbing alcohol on the wound is in this same year. Bob Kraft, the owner, who they have had a very, very tumultuous relationship since Bill Belichick left, Bob Kraft is officially a finalist for this particular Hall of Fame class. Now, it has been reported. Bill Polian was sort of blamed for it, who was also an executive, a very good friend of Bob Kraft's. Bill Polian has since denied it and went and got receipts. Initially, he said that, he made it clear that he voted for Bob Kraft. And he said, I think I voted for Bill Belichick, too. It has since been corroborated that they do believe that Bill Polian voted for voted for Bill Belichick. But it is just really interesting that Bill Belichick doesn't make it. Bill Polian did disclose that there were two things that stood out, right? Spygate and Deflategate. Spygate being one that is solely put on the back and on the burden from a legacy standpoint on the Bill Belichick. Deflategate sort of brings Tom Brady into it with the pressure in the footballs. But Spygate is Bill Belichick's to wear. Bill Polian did admit that was discussed, right? And this whole Hall of Fame thing, somehow, some way, on a particular day, January 13th, to be exact. January 13th, to be exact. The voters got into a room and met from 10 a.m. in the morning and 6 p.m. in the evening. And somehow, some way, people with a brain, people with a pulse, people with a heart, people with enough experience in the National Football League and enough experience around football spent that long on that day and came away with Bill Belichick, the second winningest coach of all times in the National Football League, the most Super Bowl wins of all time as a head coach in National Football League, 9 appearances in the Super Bowl, 17 division titles. Somehow, some way, we know that from a front office standpoint, Bill Belichick wasn't coaching the best talent year in and year out. They were able to do things that no one else was able to do. They defied free agency. They made superstars out of players that would not have been a household name, but they were fortunate enough to be playing for the New England Patriots, playing for Bill Belichick. Somehow, some way, on January 13th, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., they walked out, and Bill Belichick is not a finalist. I think that they should put body cams in there and see who the hell is doing what and who's saying what. There is no way that Bill Belichick, and now I hate Bill Belichick just as much as anybody else. I think his personality leaves a lot to be desired. I don't like the way the man dressed. I don't like how he interacts with the media. I don't like the fact that he was so dominant. In fact, I hate how he is this North Carolina version of Bill Belichick. All of those things, I will agree with you. I would even say if I had to put money on it, I would bet the man breath stink. I'm good with all of them things. All of them. From a personality standpoint, I dislike Bill Belichick. I didn't like anything about the New England Patriots era when he was coaching it. I do think that they cheated. All of those things aside, Bill Belichick should be a first ballot Hall of Famer in order for the Hall of Fame, if nothing else, to maintain legitimacy. There's not sort of they don't owe him anything. They don't. And it's been reported, Bill Polian has quickly said he didn't say it, but it was reported that Bill Polian said it initially, that because of Spygate, we should make him wait a year as penance. And what we have to do in all of these environments where there's a vote, we got to start taking the emotion out of it. Because even in that room, knowing that I am a self-proclaimed Bill Belichick hater, I couldn't stand the Patriots. When people wear Patriots paraphernalia around me, I think that there might be something wrong with them. If I'm doing a transaction with them, I'm checking my money twice. I can't stand the Patriots. I hate them. I would have been able to put that aside and make the right vote. Because if not, the whole process, the whole Hall of Fame is now under scrutiny and being questioned in terms of if its legitimacy. And we've done it in politics where now we're just crazy, right? No one's having rational conversations anymore. We're going to like draw our line, we're going to hold our ball, and we're going to be just as immature as possible just to prove a point. So I guess the committee proved the point by keeping the second winningest coach from a wins perspective and the most winningest coach in terms of Super Bowl wins perspective by keeping him out of the Hall of Fame as a first ballot Hall of Fame. Bill Belichick refused to comment to the media, which doesn't surprise us because of his terse interactions with the media. It probably led to this moment. But I think that the Hall of Fame undermines itself when someone of that stature, when the numbers just don't lie, doesn't get the vote. Now, I said the same thing with Terrell Owens. Terrell Owens should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? You don't punish someone because you don't like them. The Hall of Fame is about the merits. It's a meritocracy. Who deserves to be there because the numbers support that they deserve to be there. And now there's some extreme cases where there's extreme behaviors that you could factor that in. But nothing that Bill Belichick did in all of his 29 years as an NFL coach and all of the things that made him, made me despise him. And none of those things would warrant him not getting that vote. That's just my 2 cents. Please weigh in. You guys let me know. I do want to know what you think. Should Bill Belichick have been voted in first ballot Hall of Fame? What's up, D. Collins? I'm going to read this just so I can let some of the involvement from our audience be a part of the show today. While my man Big Flo Show is out and about. Dennis Collins says, as a Titan fan, I'm very proud of Shedeur Sanders. This is the beginning of an awesome story. I would agree, man. Him and Cam Ward, I think they invested some really good time and effort into the content they were creating, and I think they've invested a really great amount of time and develop a good friendship that I think is going to become a good rivalry in the NFL. Let's hope. My girl Michelle Steele says the best day. A lot of people agree with that. Bill Belichick is not likable. He's a very unlikable human. He should be an unlikable Hall of Famer. Just my 2 cents. We're going to keep moving, man, because this episode is Be Legendary. Like we ask you every week, please like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a foe, tag anyone that you know, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the podcast. This part of this show, man, I'm gonna do something that I probably should have done already. And I want to make sure I do it. What's up, my man Lionel Phillips in the building? I want to make sure I do it on this day. Because when you get news that someone like Lou Holtz has been moved to hospice care, you all of a sudden, like you have all these memories of all the times that Coach Holtz impacted your life. Whether you never met him and you just watched him on TV and you hate Notre Dame and you cheered for the fall of Lou Holtz and Notre Dame, or you're on the other end like me that became a big Notre Dame enthusiast and you like seeing all the success of not only Notre Dame and Lou Holtz. When you hear someone that's had such an impact on college football, that's had such an impact on so many lives, and then the impact beyond football and beyond the players that he's coached, your heart goes out. So I did ask you at the beginning of the show to please say a prayer for Lou Holtz, say a prayer for his family. When you hear someone has moved to hospice, those are some horrible words when you hear hospice. So you automatically think of his kids and his grandkids and his loved ones and all the players. And so I ask you sincerely, please pray for Lou Holtz. And this episode is going by the title of Be Legendary. I don't think it, and I'm biased, I don't think it gets more legendary than Lou Holtz. I don't think it gets any more legendary than Lou Holtz. He's a One of those people that just stands out. I referred to him to my friends as, oh, that's my white stepfather, making light of the fact that, yeah, this is a white man from West Virginia, all of 110 pounds, who had all of us, myself included, coming from South Florida, doing stuff like wearing dookie rope chains and gold teeth. And I had a lot to say, a lot of hair, a lot of mouth, and I was absolutely intimidated by every word that came out of that man's mouth because he was in complete control. The control was because of respect. And so out of that respect, I give you this segment of our show. The coaching, the mentoring, the shaping of lives that Lou Holtz has done is absolutely legendary. When you think of the word legendary and leaving an impact beyond measure, Lou Holtz fits that description. He is a man of honor and integrity, and a man who absolutely has made me who I am. On this same platform, there was a perceived rift. I said some things, and I'm going to address that here now. But even that was made possible because of the man that he's not allowed, but helped me to become. By design, he has impacted communities throughout the world. And I say by design because you think of all the men that have played for Coach Holtz and what they're doing now. Their kids, the kids that I coach, those words, love, commitment, trust, that was at the core of my rebuke, if you will, to Coach, which was also 6 years ago. I still share those words with every team that I coach. I try to live those words on a daily basis. And I'm gonna get through this letter, because a letter is sort of where we came to this point. We're at odds. And so I'm going to make sure I read this letter to him. Now, I've reached out to Coach Holtz several times since the incident. I hate that I was not able to be in person and say some things to him. So this is not something where I'm trying to get something off my conscience. I'm good with where Coach Holtz and I are. But it is a celebration of someone who has been legendary, who's created a legacy that is amazing, that is a life and a legacy worth the emotions that come with today. A lot of people woke up with a heavy heart today, and the word hospice is something that none of us want to hear. He's 89 years old, good old Coach Holtz. And only recently looked like he aged a little bit, but he's looked the same age since I met him. I'm going to do my best to get through this without crying. The last time I did it, I cried. My rebuke in that letter, it brought a lot of emotions out because, yeah, man, it was just, yes, sir. That's all you said to Coach Holtz. Yes, sir. Yes, coach. The last thing you would do is challenge him in any way. So it brought out some emotions, but I'll try to read this letter and hopefully it'll make sense. Bear with me. Dear Coach, on this particular Friday, we all woke up with a heavy heart, having heard the news that you have been moved to hospice care as you battle health issues. Hospice is a word that has shocked my conscience ever since I heard it in 2012 when my mother was battling cancer. But good old Hospice might have finally met its match with Leo Holtz, a.k.a. Coach Holtz, a.k.a. Lou. For the countless generations of players who were blessed to call you coach, the memories of legendary games, tense moments in practice whenever we would smell that smoke from that pipe, which meant you were hovering over us, and the Holtzisms where you taught us true life lessons that we have kept with us forever. All of these things have been flashing through our minds since hearing the news of your current health condition. For me, it is even a bit more difficult considering the last time I said the words, "Dear Coach," on this same platform, it was to deliver a somewhat contentious message to you. I was overwhelmed with emotions as I read it because I hold you in such a high regard. While I have reached out to you since that moment, and since that 2020 presidential election that divided our country in so many ways and created tension even within our Notre Dame brotherhood, I never made it down to see you and clear the air in person. So today, in this letter, I'll do it just as publicly as I did when taking issues with a few of your decisions in 2020. Truth be told, I was speaking on behalf of a lot of players when I said what I said. And I was only courageous enough to take a stance because I was blessed enough to be coached by Coach Holtz. Mentored by a man named Lou, shaped by the guidance that you provided, gave me the courage in that moment. While the country has become even more divided politically since then, and the current issues are even more polarizing across political lines, I sincerely regret not being able to shake your hand, hug your thinly framed body, and tell you in person that I love you for all that you have done for me and all the players you've ever coached. Through those Holtzisms, I was able to say what I thought needed to be said in the moment, but I've also watched teammates. Through those Holtzisms, I've watched teammates start and grow wildly successful businesses. I've watched former players go on to be amazing coaches, and an entire brotherhood who was coached by you go on to be great husbands, fathers, and leaders in their communities. Holtzisms were more than words. They were a way of life. And because you taught us about love, commitment, and trust, just know that the entire brotherhood of players that you coach absolutely trust in the power of prayer. We absolutely trust that you will keep fighting because that's just who you are, Coach. No matter the odds, you kept fighting in games. You'll keep fighting now. Because of you, we are committed to doing whatever we can to support you and your family as you engage in this battle with health issues. And we are also committed to continuing the fight to improve the world we live in on a daily basis. And we're absolutely committed to maintaining the brotherhood that you established between us. And last but certainly not least is love. We love you dearly, Coach Holtz, and cherish the fact that you taught us to love each other and to love our families, to love God, and the power of love in trying to change the world around us. Keep fighting, Coach. Or as you'd say, get your damned ass up and let's run that play again. With love and sincerity, one of the several young souls that you shaped with your greatness, B. Brown. There's no way to get through that without crying, probably. And the tears back in 2020, although the message was, again, a bit contentious when it came to Coach Holtz, those tears and these tears are because God showed out when he made a man named Lou Holtz. And because God did such a good job in making that man, regardless of what it become, political differences, or not even necessarily political differences, but differences in terms of how we viewed that moment. Because of the man that God made, it has helped shape so many other men. And so, to all the brothers from the Brotherhood of Notre Dame that heard those words, either tonight or last night, rather, or today, that Coach Holtz was moved to hospice. I pray for not only Coach, but I pray for each and every one of us as we deal with the reality that our time on earth, it's not limitless. And I also pray in this particular episode, be legendary, that we can be legendary in trying to live up to the way Coach taught us to be and taught us how to live. And that's it for that. I'm gonna move on. I don't want to make it a cry fest. It's appropriate. Just so happens that this is the day the Big Flow Show has something else to do. I think being here alone in this space and having the space to say what needed to be said, ironically, God doesn't make mistakes. It just so happens that this is the day that I'm solo on the platform. I love you, Coach Oates. I love everything you've done for me. I love everything you've done for my brothers in the Notre Dame Brotherhood. And I pray that God puts his healing hands over you. All right. I got through that better than I thought I would. I'm going to finish this show today. I am going to do it because there's other things that we're going to discuss. But before I do that, I'm going to ask humbly, if you like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a foe, tag anyone you know. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and the podcast. When it comes to a family feud, people won't really understand that I can dislike something you do and still love the hell out of you. And I'm glad that the Brotherhood has come to that understanding. And yeah, I've sent several messages to Coach Holtz. This is one that I wanted to use this platform and make sure that he got that message as well. Love you, Coach. Be legendary. There were some other things, right, that we got to get to this week. The legendary Derrick Rose. This week, Derrick Rose had his jersey retired. And I wanted to make sure that he was on this show because Derrick Rose, in a very short amount of time, did some really amazing things in Chicago. And you heard some of the words. Lou Holtz had some powerful words for Derrick Rose. In the same week, you also had the legendary Mark Aguirre got his jersey retired. And so Chicago, as a basketball community, Mark Aguirre, if you didn't know, is from Chicago. Mark Aguirre was picked the first pick over Isaiah Thomas. They've maintained their relationship, and they are just as Chicago can be. And while Derrick Rose is not only from Chicago, but played for the Bulls and got his jersey retired, is Mr. Chicago, I would argue that both Derrick Rose and Mark Aguirre, and supported by the fact that they got their jersey retired, are the quintessential definition of legendary. And I would ask this, especially when it comes to Derrick Rose. If Derrick Rose would have retired as soon as he got hurt, although it was a short career, we probably are talking about him like we talk about Barry Sanders, Megatron, a career that was cut short, but Bo Jackson, but arguably pound for pound, one of the best careers ever. Derrick Rose went on to finish his career, and post-injury, let's just say he wasn't the same Derrick Rose. Had a good career, played long, and played much better than me. He's much better than the average Joe. He still played in the NBA, contributed, did well, helped teams win, and was a very good spokesperson for the NBA. So I'm not going too far here, but he wasn't Derrick Rose. He wasn't the Chicago Derrick Rose. So I ask you guys this. Big Flo show and I had a quick debate, and I wish he was here today because we'd have a thorough debate here on the show. And yeah, we'll call it debate instead of an argument. Does someone's late career, not lackluster, but definitely average, later in their career, average performances, below the legendary standard, does that taint their career? You think about Muhammad Ali losing to Larry Holmes. You think about Larry Holmes losing to Mike Tyson. Boxing is a good place to go. You think about Mike Tyson and all his late career losses. Boxing is a good sport to think of it because when Mike Tyson was on the top, he was like Candyman. You couldn't say his name 5 times to look in the mirror, or else Mike Tyson might be there with one of them vicious uppercuts. But by the end of his career, no one feared Mike Tyson. Would you say the same thing for someone like a Derrick Rose? Derrick Rose, when he was at the height of being an NBA superstar, the reason he got his jersey retired in Chicago, I mean, that Derrick Rose, but for the knee injury in the Miami Heat series, I'm a Miami Heat fan, but for his injury, I don't know if we beat them. Derrick Rose was that dude. Does the late career, let's call it more average output for someone like a Derrick Rose, does it taint their career? Really want to hear what you guys got to say about that. I'm going to read all the comments. We're going to move forward in terms of this show, but answer that question for me. Somebody like Derrick Rose, or even if you go Mark Aguirre. Mark Aguirre was able to get back with Isaiah Thomas, and they won a lot of games in Detroit, but Mark Aguirre got his jersey retired in Dallas. So answer that, whether it be Derrick Rose, Mark Aguirre, whether it be a different sport, like boxing, I said Larry Holmes and Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, does late career, and I'll even say it, I'm a Michael Jordan fan, the Wizards years weren't the Bulls years. They just weren't. We are getting to the point where we're going to face it with LeBron. We said, like, for the first time, more than likely, unless a miracle happens, LeBron's not going to make this all-star team this year. And, you know, I know that his potential swan song, maybe the last time he played in Cleveland this week, this all happens this week. And so I asked this week, late in your career, when you aren't, for basketball purpose, jumping as high, for boxing purposes, when you aren't moving as well in the ring, and football purposes, when you aren't having breakaway touchdowns or making leaping interceptions, later in your career, when Father Time does what it does it taint those top years? Derrick Rose, I think, is a great example. His small sample size when he was in Chicago could be, I think, pit against anybody. Those were some amazing years. He was electric. He was the face of the league. He was the cultural shift that the league needed at that time. And then he went on to play for a whole bunch of other teams. He contributed, but there was no longer D Rose, who everyone feared. Let me know what you guys think about that, man. But shout out to D Rose, shout out to Mark Aguirre for getting their numbers retired. D Rose in Chicago, Mark Aguirre in Dallas. Shout out to y'all, man. That is quite the status. That's legendary. You talk about people who lived it. That is legendary. When a franchise says nobody else is going to wear that number, you have such cachet, such status. You accomplished so many things by wearing this jersey. that our franchise is protecting that jersey so we can commemorate it, so it holds the weight that it deserves to hold. Shout out D Rose. Shout out Mark Aguirre. And shout out to both franchises in Chicago and Dallas for recognizing the greatness that both of these men displayed on that basketball court. Let me read some of these comments. So we'll see, man. Big Flo and I had a whole spirited debate about it. So I want to see what you guys are saying. Hopefully you side with me. But please keep him weighing in. I like that answer. So he says, in Chicago, it doesn't take long to be a legend, just like Gail Series. You're right. And D Rose absolutely earned legend status. So I agree with you, my man. What up, dog team? Lionel Phillips in the building. He says also, Lionel Phillips says, I didn't think lower level performances should have an impact on your legacy, even later in your career, especially after getting hurt. I would agree with you there. But truth be told, man, it's like numbers are the numbers. Numbers are the numbers. So we got to at least take into account Michael Jordan. It was more injury prone towards the end of his career. One thing that we have to acknowledge, several things, but one of the things that we should acknowledge about LeBron is his longevity. So he's in year 38, year 23, and still getting it done, right? Still getting it done. If he misses the All-Star game, it's ain't gonna be by a lot. Still getting it done. So I don't know. I just think it's interesting conversation, because when we get into those barbershops and the legacy conversations start to happen and the comparisons start to come out, compare, contrast, however you do it, what else can we look to other than the numbers? And so for Derrick Rose, when those numbers drop considerably as he moved on for the Bulls, what do we think about those years in terms of his overall legacy? Having said that, shout out to him, man, for getting that number retired. Well deserved, my brother. I loved how he directed his message to his son, how it was positive, how it was aspirational, how it was emotional. That's what it's all about. D Rose has always been a people's champion. He's one of those guys that you gotta like him. Even more likable in watching the ceremony, seeing what Lou Holtz had to say about him, but more importantly, his message, his words for his own son, seeing his son's emotional reaction. Shout out D Rose, Mark Aguirre. We talked about who said it. Be legendary. Kobe Bean Bryant. Shedeur, perfect timing, Sanders. We talked about who's lived it. Bill Belichick, Lou Holtz, D Rose, Mark Aguirre. They lived it. Be legendary. Now let's talk about those who are still in the to be determined category. Last week, we did something we've never done before. We used a figure to be in our thumbnail. He made the weekly Mount Rushmore of the Ball Hog Sports Talk, Keon Coleman. And we had so many different topics. It was so rich with topics last week that we didn't even touch on it. And for those of you who've been under a rock and don't know, Keon Coleman is a wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. The owner or your GM was on he was on stage and basically sort of just threw Keon Coleman under the bus. Like, yo, man, ownership didn't really, our GM didn't want to, it was owner rather. He said our GM didn't want to even draft Keon Coleman. It was the previous coach. The coach is the reason why we drafted him. Now, I drafted him in the first round. He's had ups and downs. He struggled a little bit with his consistency in catching passes. But it put Keon Coleman on an island. Other players came out and talked about not, as a draft pick, not being the choice of management and how that impacted their career. Players came out and talked about how it limited their opportunities, how it guided their career because they weren't given the same liberty. Their leash was shorter to make mistakes. And so it opened up a can of worms in a conversation that I thought was very interesting. But what it also did is it put Keon Coleman front and center on an island with you talk about a hot seat, with an interrogation lamp beaming on his forehead, because in front of America, the owner, who he ain't got to answer to nobody, the owner disclosed publicly that that GM didn't want Keon Coleman. It was the previous coach. Being an NFL player, you automatically, because of the lack of guarantees and protections in your contracts, you always feel as though you're one play away from being out. You always feel as though you're under siege. You always feel as though that there are very few protections to maintain your livelihood and your career. But you got to multiply that by a million zillion, if that's a number, when publicly, in front of the entire world, the owner of the team that drafted you tells said world that management never wanted you. It was the previous coach that just got fired. You cannot feel no more job insecurity than that. Now, there have been people that have gone on and talk about Keon Coleman. He should be a pro. This means that this should light a fire for him. He should get into the lab. He should work. All them things is true. But damn it, that's a young 20-something-year-old man who's basically just been told in front of the world that your job is in jeopardy. To be determined if whether or not he's going to be legendary. The new coach, Joe Brady, came and sort of gave him a boost of confidence. And I think hopefully it gives him the opportunity to resuscitate his career. I didn't like how the owner did it. It just showed just how it's like the good old boys club. The owners have really absolute zero regard for players. We're treated like chattel. And I say we because I experienced it long enough to know that it wasn't right to do that publicly. It wasn't right to do that to a young professional trying to figure it out. No matter what walk of life you're in, what career you're in. As an attorney, as a young associate, I was trying to figure it out. When I was in finance as a young associate, I'm trying to figure it out. Keon Coleman is a player who just got to the NFL, who's just trying to figure it out. So to be put on blast in front of the entire sports world and to be made out to be a meme, to be embarrassed, and also being put in a position where you have been warned. They didn't want you. So I doubt that they'll have any issues moving on. You have no job security. It was tough to see that. So I'm happy to see Joe Brady gave him a lifeline, has said positive things about him. And Keon Coleman, I hope that you can be legendary. I hope that you take this situation and you figure out how to be legendary. Whether I'm going to use Shedeur Sanders because his drop from being potentially the first pick to 5th round, somehow, some way he kept working. He's in the Pro Bowl. If he's going to ultimately be legendary, we shall see. But when it comes to this year and making lemonade out of lemons, Shedeur Sanders was legendary. I hope Keon Coleman can do the same thing. I wasn't a big Keon Coleman fan. That's a wide receiver that transferred from Michigan State, went to Florida State, had a great one-year career, has the prototypical size, speed, and took off and became a first-round draft pick. But I am rooting for Keon Coleman now. I hope you can figure it out and become legendary, my brother, because that owner had no right putting you in that position. Wanted to make sure I touched on it. Will Super Bowl 60 be legendary? The two teams are set. You have the New England Patriots, led by a young Drake May, drafted in the 2022 class, drafted in the same class as Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. The third pick was Drake May. Drake May is the first quarterback in that draft class to lead his team to the Super Bowl. Drake May, arguably MVP of the league this year. He's played that well. On the other side, representing the NFC, is the Seattle Seahawks, led by probably the most surprising quarterback to lead his team to the NFL, Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was drafted in the 2018 class of quarterbacks. Also a class that we were led to believe was rich with quarterback talent. If you look at 2022, Caleb Williams balling right now, doing great. Jaden Daniels, hopefully injury doesn't set him back, but having a really stellar career. Drake May's doing what he's doing. That class is solidified. 2018 class of quarterbacks, number one pick was Baker Mayfield. Baker touchdown maker. Reinvented himself at Tampa, doing well, but had to reinvent himself. We were questioning whether or not he was going to be a bust. He was being compared to some of the greatest busts of all time before he went and got another lifeline and went to Tampa. As a Cleveland Browns fan, it's like, I've seen this movie before, but I'm rooting for Baker. He was the first pick. The third pick of that draft was Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold and Drake May were both the third pick of their respective NFL drafts, both quarterbacks, obviously. Sam Darnold was the third pick. The New York Jets select Sam Darnold from USC. The other quarterbacks in that draft was Josh Allen. He's already won one MVP. He was the number 7 pick in that draft. You had Josh Rosen, flamed out. Arizona drafted him. He was in Miami for a while. Didn't pan out for Josh Rosen. I don't think Josh Rosen is still in the NFL. I'm pretty certain he's not. And then the number 32 pick of that draft, last pick of the first round, was Lamar Action Jackson, who's won not one, but 2 MVPs. Think about that draft class. Think about that draft class. While Lamar Jackson has won 2 MVPs, he's also taken a lot of heat for not leading his team to a Super Bowl. A lot of conditions to it. He was not alone in those teams not getting there. They have since moved on from the coach that also was not able to get that Lamar Action Jackson-led team to the Super Bowl. Josh Allen has won MVP, but going to start feeling the heat too for not leading his team to a Super Bowl. Not in a million years would anybody with any good sense but money have a bet that Sam Darnold will be the first quarterback in that draft to lead his team to the Super Bowl. So we'll see if Super Bowl 60 will be legendary. Halftime show, you got Bad Bunny. With all this ICE stuff, it should be interesting. It's already been reported they're going to be ICE agents at the Super Bowl. After I was able to read my letter to Coach Holtz today, the last thing I'm going to do today is go down the slippery slope of politics. But Bad Bunny being the halftime performer and singing at least some of his songs in Spanish, it's going to be interesting what happens in this country when that moment occurs, because there's just a lot of animosity right now. And so I hope Bad Bunny can bring us together. I don't know a lot of Bad Bunny songs, I have to admit, but I'm hoping that he nails it and that we have a legendary Super Bowl. Is there a legendary cheater among us? In this episode of Be Legendary, Ole Miss has been accused of tampering again. Dabo Swinney came out and talked about Ole Miss and had receipts, and now Fresno State says they have receipts of them tampering. Not just the head coach, but talked about Ole Miss coaches and having receipts of them tampering. I'm putting this one on the good old NCAA because there is so little regulation as to what is going on. Ole Miss is doing what they need to do. All right? I talked about Bill Belichick earlier in the show and people trying to make him pay penance for his cheating with Skygate or Spygate, they called it. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. I'm mad at Ole Miss. Ole Miss got to be a little more thoughtful about their tampering and maybe put a little more thought into the whole process of how you communicate with some of these prospects. But everybody's cheating. So I'm not getting mad at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is doing what they have to do. And until the NCAA does its job, rolls up its sleeves and creates some guidelines and some real how-tos when it comes to these coaches getting players out of the transfer portal and how to communicate it, with them, especially for a team that went to the college football playoffs. That window is so short, and everybody else is already fishing from that pond. I'm not surprised that Ole Miss is guilty or not guilty, is being accused of tampering. So be legendary when you cheat, baby. If you're gonna cheat, be legendary. I'll go home with the Ball Hawk Spotlight. For those of you who are still in the live audience, really appreciate you guys and keep coming with the comments. Please continue to like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a phone, tag anyone that you know. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and the podcast. My last two things will be the Ball Hawk Spotlight moment. It's been a solo show, so being solo, I got to pick not one but two Ball Hawk Spotlight topics. The first one I'm going with is AI, not artificial intelligence. AI, the answer. Allen Iverson is being accused by some players. They went on an Australia trip. One of the former players called him a fraud. I guess the Australian League brings over players. They have them do appearances, and Allen Iverson might have shunned one of the appearances. I guess there was a kid dealing with health issues that wanted to see the answer. And so he's being called as a fraud. I don't know about Australia. Last week it was Naomi Osaka and her beef in Australia. And now they calling the answer a fraud. He's the answer. How can he be the fraud? But interesting news. I hope that from just a PR standpoint, Allen Iverson's team can get together and get beyond this, because you never want to be looked at as the celebrity that is in another country, another continent. You know, people paying for you to be over there, expecting you to make certain appearances. Kids are hopeful that they'll just get an opportunity, right, to brush up against your garment, to maybe even wash your feet. They treat you like gods. The last thing you want to do is shun one of the appearances. So I hope this is not true. And if it is, Allen Iverson hopefully will clear it up quickly. The last thing we're going to go home with, the Ball Hawk Spotlight moment. You know what it is. The Ball Hawk Spotlight is when you got the ball. We're at the end of the show. All eyes are on you. Spotlight is on you. We need a bucket. So we need a good topic. The one that I got to go home with is Sha'Carri Richardson. Although she has not been making a lot of the track appearances, not doing some of the events and meets when it comes to indoor, she is not afraid of speed. She was arrested for driving reportedly 104 miles an hour in Orange County, California. And the jokes are going to write themselves as one of the, if not the fastest woman on the planet in terms of being a sprinter. Why are you driving 104 miles an hour? Come on, Sha'Carri. She's had other bouts with PR, so I'm hoping again from just a PR standpoint for both her and Allen Iverson, hope they get past this and move on. This is the Ball Hawk Spotlight, and you know it's at the end of the show. I hate that the Big Flow show is not here, but we know people got to do what they got to do. As I started the show talking about my monogram jacket and my pride in Notre Dame and soliciting prayers for Coach Holtz, I'll end it the same way. Be Legendary was the title of the show. And we talked about some legendary figures in sports. We talked about legendary coaches, legendary players. But to me, no one is more legendary than Coach Lou Holtz for his impact on my life. I'm blessed to have an opportunity to have, while he still has air in his lungs, to have used this platform to read that letter to my coach. I will be sending texts. I know as players will galvanize, and there'll be a lot of prayers offered. And I ask anyone within the sound of my voice, please pray for Coach Lou Holtz, as the news has been made public that he was moved to hospice. And then I end with this. I challenge each and every one of us to be legendary. Despite my issues with Coach Holtz, I try to be legendary in how I live and how I love, because I was guided by a legendary man. I refuse to go down the political alley today in today's show, because so many conversations are being alienated So many relationships are being squandered because of our differences. I'm challenging each and every one of us, myself included, to be legendary. We can disagree with people's politics and their ideologies and still love. Let's be legendary and being able to ignore the climate that we have right now in this country and do things for substantive reasons and try to help more people. Let's be legendary. No matter what your political belief is, be able to see from an objective standpoint different sides of stories. And when we talk about loss of life, let's be legendary and understand that whether it's a man or a woman or a boy, girl, adult, young person, it doesn't matter. Families are missing someone. Let's be legendary and being sympathetic in the fact that these families are missing a loved one when life is taken. And so I leave and hopefully be legendary in offering the Holtz family nothing but love, nothing but prayers, nothing but positivity as Coach Holtz has been moved to hospice. And I challenge the Ball Hog Sports Talk community. Let's be legendary and come back next week. Let's be legendary and understand the connection between sports business and entertainment. I thank you. Let's be legendary in helping us get this to more people. So please like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a foe, tag anyone that you know, and subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the podcast on Spotify. I was legendary because I got the gold Dookie rope chain straight from South Florida and the monogram jacket, something that Coach Holtz would not have allowed in dress A. I would have had to take the chain off. The shirt and tie and the jacket would have worked. But my salute to you, Coach Holtz. In my dress A attire, I send you nothing but love, man. It's the Ball Hog Sports Talk, where the managerial decisions of big finance meet the weekly storylines of sports and entertainment. If you had to put it in a pop culture stance or a pop culture phrase, I would say it's show me the money colliding with just give me the damn ball. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for listening. For those who are part of the live audience, we thank you for your support. And we ask you to like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a foe, tag anyone that you know, subscribe to the YouTube channel and the podcast. So happy that those who are in the live audience helped me get through it with the comments, helped me get through it when it got a little bit emotional patch there when I was reading the letter to Coach Holtz. Couldn't do it without you, literally and figuratively. We could not do it without you. So continue to support us. We'll continue to give you some riveting content from sports business entertainment. With that, we out, good people. Have a great weekend. Be safe. Stay prayed up. You're going to make it through, Coach Holtz. Let's do this, baby. Another fight. You're absolutely wired for it. God bless.